Good morning, everyone. We have got a new story for today, and I thought I would choose something a little bit silly. So, this is quite a funny story, Blamehounds. If you need a laugh, settle down, grab a pillow, and get ready for Blamehounds. So, chapter one, Fart. Fart number one made no sound. The bum that was to blame belonged to Mr. Lime. But as far as Mr. Lime knew, only he could smell anything. He decided to say nothing about it. Fart number two made a small noise, like a mouse in distress. It was a great deal more smelly, like dead fish in a harbour at low tide. Mrs. Lime's nose twitched. She was dishing out potato salad for the children's tea, and the smell did nothing for her appetite. No one could ignore fart number three. A loud noise, like a car skidding on a wet road, was followed by a smell like a very hot day in a butcher's shop. "Pooh-wee!" Olive Lime yelled. She jumped down from her seat and pinched her nose with her fingers. "Nobody said you could leave the table," Mrs. Lime snapped. She raised her hand to her face to try to protect her nostrils. "Something's crawled up someone's bum and died," Gregor Lime sniggered. "We won't have that sort of language at the table," Mrs. Lime barked. Her face turned as green as her name as the smell seeped up her nose. Mr. Lime saw his chance. He pulled back his chair to reveal a sleepy dog curled up under the table. Mr. Lime pointed his finger at the dog, who had just been having a nice dream about dropping cats off bridges. "Bad Norman!" Mr. Lime shouted. "Farty dog!" Mr. Lime gave Norman a good kick up the bum with his size 11 shoes. Norman howled in pain and then took in a big gulp of the terrible smell. It wasn't the best way to be woken up. Norman didn't stop to find out why this had happened. He fled from the room before Mr. Lime's foot could make contact again. Chapter 2, Paint. The next day, Olive and Gregor went out to play in the backyard. Norman watched them from a sunny spot of grass. The children had a frisbee, and they giggled as they tossed it from one end of the garden to the other. Norman didn't understand this game. It looked like fun, but why did no one run off with the frisbee in their mouth to a quiet spot where they could chew it up? Gregor threw the frisbee higher and higher until at last it went so high that it landed on one of the window ledges upstairs. Now, everyone knows that dogs are foolish, but sometimes they are not as foolish as children. Norman watched as Gregor and Olive took the contents of the shed and began to pile them up against the back wall. There was a compost bin, an old trunk, a big old pram, and a stuffed anteater. No one knew why there was a stuffed anteater in the shed. Norman watched as Gregor climbed up the pile of objects to try and get to the frisbee. Uh-oh, I wonder what's going to happen here. "I can almost reach it," Gregor called to his sister. "Hand me up those big tins of paint, the ones with the wobbly lids." Olive handed the tins up, and Gregor added them to his pile. Norman watched as the pile swayed to one side and swayed to the other. Then at last there was a crash like thunder, and the objects scattered everywhere. When Mrs. Lime ran out the back door, she found her garden was now all the colours of the rainbow. Right in the centre were Norman and an emerald green anteater in a pram. "Bad Norman!" Mrs. Lime screamed. "Messy dog!" Norman had realised long ago that this was his lot in life. Norman was a blamehound. Chapter 3, Whack. Well, we might leave it there for today. Do you have a blamehound at home? Okay, tune in tomorrow. Bye for now.